Hey chat, it's me, OddTron here. Here to tell you we're gonna talk about Azimuth lore. I know, what a special moment for us all, right? We're gonna talk about what I kind of know about this arc in particular and what's kind of gone down in a really short, sweet version. I'll sound like I'm rambling a lot, but that's usually because I do ramble. But that's normal. We expect that from OddTron, right? But yeah, let's go on. Let's start off with the beginning of this arc, right? Starting in the beginning, as far as I know, we started in Sector 82. There wasn't a lot of group members, or I think it was Sector 82. There wasn't a lot of group members back then. You had people like Salty, who was playing 40 at the time. You had Ariel. You had a bunch of other characters, and there was some betrayals that happened during that period. There was a whole execution mark, and there was just a lot of chaos back then. They got into a lot of trouble with killing an advisor. They killed numerous Union soldiers, and they basically just went full fucking bonkers back then. In the beginning of this arc, right? Then everything started to slow down. They had plans to join well, I believe they were kind of forced into this relationship, but they joined a group called the ULF. The ULF are a faction that are a splinter cell of a larger superpower in the world known as Barovia. That'll be important later. As we go on through the arc, they're making some good fucking calls with the ULF, and they're kind of working for them as an entity known as Dagger One. This is where the group gets their first name. Sorry, I was running into some issues with some friends regarding a project of mine that I'm doing for school. We just talked about the ULF. Basically, the group worked as Dagger One. At some point during a betrayal of theirs, where 40's their leader of the group betrayed them, 40 takes leadership, and 40 begins these deals with a group known as... Sorry, once again, more school stuff that I have to be doing. There's a lot of things that are going on. But anyways, got some music for us. Put that shit on. Guess not. Music isn't playing, so it doesn't really matter. But continuing onwards, really, after that occurred, after 40 got leadership, they began making deals with groups like Star. Star is this big union group that assigned them with the job to, well, grab artifacts that were being used for not really good things, but originally were promised to, hey, we're going to help the people in the Americas, because the Americas are currently undergoing a war against this thing called the Scourge, which, again, happened here. Which is something that this group also experienced. I think I mentioned that they spotted the Scourge, aka known as Elith, or widely known as the Elith by some people. It's more commonly known as the Scourge, though, for for most people in Algiers, at least. Following this set of instances, 40 also meets like this group of bandits, where he tries to join their leadership and tries to serve them as basically one of their own, and he leaves the group for a while. This is when I kind of started joining in, where I kind of like learning all of this stuff, because during this period they were also fleeing Morocco from the Scourge, which are no longer an issue. I'll state that, and I'll explain why later on when we get to the future of where we go now. And they're at this coastal base, and basically 40 just says, hey, I have this group, we're gonna try to help them a lot more. And he learns that the people that he was training were taken in by a man named Frederick, who was one of the leaders there. He's kind of an asshole, but he had a big plan. He did not like 40. He wears this guy Frederick is a real tall motherfucker, almost as tall as me, but real tall motherfucker who basically said, hey, fuck you. He also wears an HEV suit, so we know also, I think he might be a scientist. I don't know entirely, but something to cover on later, as we talk more about like notes I've taken in character, allow you to open up discussions and kind of understand where I got my information or what I know. I don't know if he's a scientist or he's known a bunch of scientists, which I think is most likely the case, but I know one other thing. But continuing on, not gonna ramble. Sorry, not gonna get off track. as I was saying, this is when I started to like kind of understand and start joining and start participating. We went on some mission of ours to, I do believe, deal with the Union for the ULF. A large raid on some bandit groups. And as we're in that raid, we kind of we run into Frederick and his men who basically ambush us and ambush the ULF. And we see him in this underground Union base, and he just tells us, "Hey, sorry," and he sends the Black Blood, which is a bioweapon alteration towards the genetic code. It basically allows you to become a standard zombie in some ways, but you of course bleed black blood. Sorry. And he sends it to the coast and basically wipes out the ULF. His faction then begins to grow and grow, and they have these systems that are used to completely wipe out communications with our communications with the ULF. So, 40 leads us out. We kind of have a decision to make, and we kind of decide, hey, we're gonna head up to the outside of just outside the coast, because we can't stay here anymore. The Black Blood are everywhere, and so we go to this little place in Bin Hayad, and we've been there since then, and we currently are there now. At least as of my recording of this. Sorry. Following our incursion there to Bin Hayad, there was a lot of talks of just like what comes next. You know, how are we going to deal with Frederick? And he became this like big arch nemesis of ours, especially with 40 being around. And then Salty had a lot of things IRL that he had to do, but he couldn't be around. But he tried to get us in working order and shape, with the rest of the group working as well. Our job was then from there just to kind of listen, do what he asked, which was helping Star, the Union, who were using weapons of war, and Barovia, who he made a promise to because of a man named Owen Gervas, to get him across the sea to at least share their mission and, start a genuine war against Frederick and all these people, because he's about 1,100 people just for whatever cause he has. He's torturing civilians. He's actively fighting a war that's just not worth it in the eyes of the people, Following that, But following that, we hear a little bit more about just shit that's going on within the group. Basically, we realize that Star has had our frequencies for like before that, we have the instance with the arms dealers. These arms dealers give us information on where all of Frederick's outposts were, and we kind of write them down. 40 and his, not right hand, but one of his helpers who got into those communications, or later to be one of his helpers, is a vice unit by the name of Ian Carlisle, amongst other group members, such as Guardian, who assisted in the process. There's also Wong, who assisted in the process. A lot of medical... No, not Wong. Wong wasn't there yet. Sorry. Catalina was... not Catalina. I'm having a moment right now. Sorry, guys. I digress. I'm not going to go full names anymore. It's going to give me an actual stroke. But we have this... We get to the arms dealers. We kind of understand that Frederick's making something big. Like, he's got this massive army. He's got multiple outposts now. He's using everyone that was trained under 40 and is training more soldiers and getting conscript from refugee groups. So any efforts have just been like, we got to focus on this guy. But of course, there still are side things or side gigs, of course, for the IHE and numerous other groups. But most importantly, one of the worst parts, or one of the more interesting parts, was working with Star, of course. As I said before, they're getting artifacts. And during this period, we run into an actual Barovian soldier, a member of the Erased, who basically tells us, yeah, Star is not really all that good. And that was like the first nudge towards a large betrayal that was going to happen. And then amongst the group, it was talked about like, hey, let's not work with SAR anymore. These guys are fucking us over. We promise not to. And then 40 goes behind our back to start operations with them again. And it creates this large issue, per se. And this creates this false perception. And then we also learned that he was working with Barovia, which of course we already partially knew. Which, before we continue on, brings us to one thing that we came to a realization of. During the raid where Owen Gervas, or for Barovia, where they were given passage across the sea, where they were going to finally get home after getting through a Union outpost, we run into the ULF. The ULF were kind of absent for a long time. For months on end, they were just gone. Primarily because of our lack of communication with them or ability to communicate with them. And they tell Dagger 1 to gun down every civilian, every soldier of Barovia's that is about to board that boat. And the reason for this is because the ULF is a splinter of Barovia, who despises Barovia and their ideals, but they know that Barovia is a superpower, and that if they get caught in this place, Barovia is just going to wipe them out. Now, amongst the player base and amongst the groups, there's this belief that, hey, we can fix this, which is not wrong. There's a possibility of always fixing things. It just depends on how you play it. Remember that communication is never simple. You do not want to react. OddTron fun fact here. Never react. Act first. Never sit around and just say, I'm going to wait this shit out. Always act first before your enemy does. It's an OddTron fun fact regarding PB Azimuth kind of relationships. I'm also changing the camera size. Please ignore me. But I digress, right? There's a lot of issues regarding that. And overall, it was a whole issue. Like, we left. We didn't want to gun down civilians. Like, we would have been okay with gunning down soldiers. But they leave. 40 is then approached by the Barovian soldiers because a group of civilians and a man by the name of Owen Gervas make it across the sea and have told Barovia, which ruined relationships. Ruined relations in general. So, during this issue where they were talking with all the ULF soldiers and all these issues with the Union, and there was like ideas of this spy around. We kick out 40, primarily because we think he might have been working with the spy, and there could be issues still regarding him. And it turned out it really wasn't, but he was trying to save his daughters. So he joined the Union by accepting a deal and became a CMD, but his promise to keep them the Union off of us for a time, which they were, but they still have attacked us because they still know that we exist. Supposedly, the commander's been memorably replaced, and we don't really know much about where 40 is right now. And we probably won't for some time. Outside of that, we're kind of entering where we are now. We're still a few months behind. But we talked with the ULF and basically formed these relations saying, hey, we didn't want to kill civilians. It's a fucked up thing to do. And they're not like, okay, fair enough. You're going to help us in our war, though. We kind of talked them down like, hey, we're not going to fight the Barovia, and we're not going to fight with you or ask you for your help for this entire thing with Frederick, which is kind of not great, considering Frederick's got an army far bigger than our own. But all in all, it's what the deal ends up being, and we kind of just use them for trade. Since then, however, we've made staggering leaps towards beginning an assault on Frederick. Our first big assault was coordinated by Tears and a bunch of Dagger 1's leadership after a raid that was done on their outpost, where we discovered that Frederick has this technology to allow for these Class D exogens. Class D, by the way, for those who aren't aware, are basically... There's not an easy way to describe them. From an old side story, we learned that they are associated with the Scourge, aka the Elif, right? And there's this whole issue with them, where they're kind of like demons, but they're not demons. They're just entities bred by the war. And I think they're used as I think they're actually weapons. No, this is just theory crafting now for me. But I do believe they are weapons of the Elif that were Elif soldiers that were converted into proper killing machines. Because all these Class D exogens know is war. And they have stated that they would get in a side story regarding called the library, or called the for the UETF side story for Arc 2 and PB was about a library, and we talked about the Class D exogens there a lot. And apparently, where Class D exogens told to this guy named Reaper, "Hey, you can call upon our armies the day it's needed," and they're basically just like, I'm pretty sure they are just Elif soldiers to a degree, or at least weapons of war crafted by the Elif. And that makes sense because the Elif are highly advanced species that have used biomass and biotechnology a lot in their past, as we see in other events. I won't go into that too much detail because it's not important to what's happening now. But I digress. Outside of that, what we know is... Sorry. The Class D Exogen device would basically shoot out, like, allow you to just start pumping out Class Ds. They'd create these small little rifts to the Class D homeworld and just let loose. Since then, we have entered this phase of just like full-on scaled war towards Frederick. The very first operation was a raiding of his logistics outpost and the a medical device that could reach immortality. Which, crazy. What we also learned in that facility is that Frederick is not gathering all this medical equipment for himself. He's gathering it so he can save his sick daughter. And he's been working on this job for years, ever since his daughter was put into a stasis kind of situation. And he was promised assistance by an anomaly of sorts. And he's not getting what he wants from it, per se. During some of the logs where he was very angry with it. But all in all, what we need to know is he needed to learn from his daughter. The device was destroyed by the sacrifice of Haniel, and the unfortunate deaths of Leah Morgan and Vice Carlisle, or Ian Carlisle, sorry. We move on though. And since then it's been a lot of fighting. It's been just fighting against Frederick and starting to push back. Where we learned that he was trying to create a portal using a machine called the Cascade Machine, which is a full recreation with its own anti-mass spectrometer to create a cascade event, a secondary cascade event, to get access to this anomaly that has promised to help Frederick and wants us to seek this library. As we learned from Ariel, one of our command elements, from her own nightmare of sorts, this entire situation is not really real. It's like it's not a good idea to chase after it. Apparently, this thing called the Scourge of Korhal, which is something from Arc 2 as well, which better way to describe him is he was originally a man, no longer a man, but we'll see we'll talk more about him later. He's an anomaly. We're not going to go full in depth what the Scourge of Korhal is, because it's more fun to figure out if you don't know who the Scourge of Korhal is. For those who do know or have questions about it, you can always message me on free. Like she's, I digress. Let's see. Since then, we took out that Cascade Machine, and then a second Cascade Machine was made, and we took that up. Recently, it's been a slow stagnation with a lot of people like infighting, and there's not a lot of actions that are being done towards grabbing and taking out Cedric outside of what we've already had planned, like missions where we're just like, all right, let's go take out Frederick. Yeah, guys, let's go get him. But we're really just trying to gather supplies at the current moment, and we then assault him on the coastal base. And the coastal base, as far as we know, is his biggest base of operations. Every single one of his forces are there now. It's really bad. It's looking really bleak for us in terms of numbers. So we only have like a small like coalition that's going on that we have right now. And the best way of actually getting its results is probably going to be like asking the other factions and trying to go out of our way. But I can't really. I mean, I would help. I'm just not in a position to, ideally, technically. But I digress. It's up to you guys as people to kind of like make the moves, make the plays, you know, like think with your brain a little bit. Like, you know, talk the talk. That's one thing. That's one thing you got to remember about PB Azimuth kind of rules. You can fight the meta. You can find the meta. You can be the best soldier. But if you can't talk the talk, you gotta walk the walk. Anyways, guys, that's kind of like a brief, like, 20-minute summary of, like, what this arc has been, at least from my point of view, and what I know. There's a lot more that's going to be missing from this. There's a lot more that can be covered. If you have any questions, I'm always more than willing to answer, and I'll probably run them by light. There's a lot of words I use here, and I would make a summary, a glossary, but, like, I'll just answer questions. I love the lore of Azimuth. I've always loved Light's lore. I've always loved the lore that I've written here. I also love the whole, you know, story that we've written together as people, because we are constantly changing the story together. It's not just one person is this main character. We can all grow. We just have to make the money moves. Talk the talk. It's not about like what you can make. It's not about, I always say this. It's never about what you can make. It's never about what you shoot. It's never about any of the gear you have. It's about the character yourself. If you can make that character into something special in your own eyes, and you can evolve them in a sense where you're not like just this, you know, you're not like a stick holding up people. You are your own chair. You are your own. You are sitting on your own chair to climb up to your own ladder, not lifted by anybody else. You have to. You could fight with people about like different ideals, but like at the end of the day, it's you as a person who decides what goes on next in the story. It's your actions that speak louder than words. And it's something that we all struggle with. It's something I struggle with consistently. And I'm finally kind of understanding how to play it. But yeah, anyways, I digress. I already finished the lore. Have a good day.